You hear the name James Watson, and you probably think of one thing: DNA, the double helix. It's one of the biggest scientific discoveries ever, but his story is so much more complicated than that. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the man, the breakthrough, and the really difficult legacy he left behind.
I mean, it's really a story of two different people, isn't it? On one side, you have the icon, the Nobel Prize winner who helped crack the secret of life. But on the other side, you have a man who became a pariah, kicked out of the very institutions he helped build for comments that were just beyond the pale. So how do you even begin to reconcile those two things?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with that complicated legacy. Then we'll rewind to the thrilling race to discover DNA's structure. We'll look at the famous double helix itself, and then get into the major controversies surrounding it. After that, we'll see the absolute revolution it sparked, and we'll finish up with the final reckoning that defined his later years. So with James Watson's recent passing, the question of his legacy has become front and center. How exactly is history supposed to remember him? He lived to be 97 years old. I mean, think about that. That's a long life. Long enough to see his discovery completely change the world, but also long enough to see his own reputation just completely fall apart. It really forces us to grapple with the legacy that is anything but black and white.
Okay, to really get what a huge deal this was, you gotta transport yourself back to the early 1950s. The entire scientific world was obsessed with one question: what does DNA actually look like? It was this mad dash, a high-stakes race to figure out the very molecule of life.
And the people involved? It's like something out of a movie. You had Watson, this brash, super smart American kid who was just 24. His partner, Francis Crick, who had this incredibly sharp, quick mind. Then over at King's College in London, you had Maurice Wilkins and the brilliant Rosalind Franklin, an absolute expert with X-rays. And kind of looming over all of them was Linus Pauling, the top chemist in the world. Everybody thought he was going to be the one to solve it.
And Watson himself, in his own book, just nails the feeling of that time. He wrote that DNA was this mystery, completely up for grabs, and nobody knew who would get there first. You can just feel the ambition and the excitement in those words. The secret of life was the prize.
So, with all this competition, how did they actually pull it off? Well, it wasn't some slow, gradual process. It was more like a lightning strike of insight.
Remember this date, February 28th, 1953, because on that one day, after so many wrong turns and failed models, it all just clicked. Watson and Crick solved the puzzle, and Watson was just 25 years old.
And the structure they came up with? Wow. It was just beautiful. An elegant, twisted ladder. You have these two backbones spiraling around, and on the inside, like rungs on the ladder, you have the chemical basis: A, T, C, and G. And the key was they always paired up the same way: A with T and C with G. This wasn't just a pretty shape. It meant everything.
And here's the kicker. They knew exactly what they had found. This one sentence, this famously understated line from their paper, says it all. They realized immediately that if you have one side of the ladder, you automatically know the other. The molecule could unzip, and each half could be a perfect template to build a new copy. That was it. That was the secret to how life copies itself. But wait a second. How did they get to this incredible model so fast? Well, this is where the story gets really complicated and pretty controversial. See, they had help, and they got it in a way they really shouldn't have. Okay, let's just walk through this timeline because it's really telling. Rosalind Franklin was at King's College, and she was taking the best X-ray pictures of DNA in the world, period. In early 1953, her colleague Maurice Wilkins showed one of her most important photos to Watson without her permission. They also got their hands on a report she had written that wasn't even published yet. Those pieces of her work were the final clues they needed. And the real tragedy? Franklin died of cancer before the Nobel Prize was awarded, so she was never even eligible. And look, history is kind of course-corrected on this. It's pretty much universally accepted now that their brilliant leap of insight was built on Franklin's incredible and uncredited work. Her data was the proof they needed to know the shape was a helix and that the backbones were on the outside, a key detail they had gotten wrong before. If you want to know what the attitude was like back then, just listen to how Watson himself described her in his book. He wasn't talking about her brilliant scientific mind, he was talking about her clothes and saying she didn't act feminine.
It's just a shocking glimpse into the dismissive, patronizing environment she had to navigate every single day. But here's the thing. Despite all the drama and the controversy around how it was discovered, the double helix, it wasn't just another scientific finding. It was the key that unlocked a new era for humanity, sparking a revolution that is still going on today. Just stop and think about the ripple effects for a second. Knowing the structure led to cracking the genetic code. That led to the massive Human Genome Project, which Watson himself got behind. The entire multi-billion-dollar biotech industry, it exists because of this discovery. Modern crime scene forensics, those ancestry kits you can buy online, it all traces back to that one moment in 1953. I mean, this really gives you a sense of the scale of it all. Scientists have basically spent more than half a century just unpacking what this one discovery means. Our ability to understand and even change life itself at the most basic level all started here. But Watson's story, it doesn't end there with the Nobel Prize and scientific glory. No. As he got older and became this legendary figure, a totally different part of his legacy started to take shape, and it would lead to his complete downfall. It really all came to a head in 2007. He gave an interview and made some absolutely incendiary comments suggesting that intelligence was linked to race on a genetic level. The blowback was huge and immediate, which led to this public apology where he basically said, "That's not what I meant," and crucially that there was no scientific basis for such a belief. But that apology, it just wasn't enough. The damage was done. He was suspended from Cold Spring Harbor Lab, the very place he had built into a global powerhouse. I mean, can you imagine? For one of the most famous scientists alive, it was a stunning and complete fall from grace. And you'd think that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Years later, he was still writing about these same ideas. He kept pushing this notion that science was being held back by political correctness from studying genetic differences between people. It showed that his comments in 2007 weren't just a mistake, but part of a worldview he'd held for a long time. And so that brings us right back to where we started, to this incredibly difficult question. What do you do with a figure like James Watson? He gave us a tool to understand our own biology in a way no one ever had before. But his own story forces us to ask how we should judge someone when their monumental genius is tangled up with ideas that are so deeply flawed and damaging. Honestly, there's just no simple answer to that.